I was going to say good morning, but it feels like the morning, but I guess we're already in the afternoon. So welcome, everybody. So this is Doing Business with Us, and it's going to be specific to USACE. This is kind of going to be geared to new entrants, people that maybe haven't worked with the federal government before, or if you haven't worked with the Corps before. So it's kind of a 101 session. So I am Crystal Harbin. I'm the Deputy for Small Business for the Louisville District. I'm celebrating just last week 15 years of federal service. Almost all of that has been with the Louisville District. And then I was with LRD for about 14 months last year. You heard from Lisa Bissick earlier. I was the senior procurement analyst on her team for a while. So my background's in contracting, and then I came to small business in 2015. So just so you know, just a little bit about me. We're going to start today. I'm going to give probably just maybe about 5 or 10 minutes of some basic information, and then we're going to open it up for panel discussion, and I'll have our panel members introduce themselves and tell you guys just a little bit about them as well. So we can go ahead and get started. The first thing, you can go ahead to the next slide if you want. I guess I should tell you what we're talking about. So we're going to talk about SAM. We're going to talk about the FAR. We're going to talk about contracts and competition types. You heard a lot about market research and the rule of two. I'm going to touch on that just a little bit. And then how to find out about our contracting opportunities, which you found out about a lot of those this morning as well. But we'll go into just a little bit more detail on that. So you can go to the next slide. So you guys heard a lot about SAM. When they were talking about SAM this morning, they were talking about how to locate our solicitations. So if you've been familiar with the federal government, or if you've kind of heard about the federal world for several years, you've probably heard about CCR, you've probably heard about FBO, you've probably heard about ESRS, like all these different systems. So GSA moved all of these systems into one platform. So now everything is on SAM. So if you want to do business with the federal government, you need to register in SAM. So your company has to be registered in SAM. That's kind of one of the first steps that you need to do if you're interested in submitting a proposal and getting a contract with the government, is to make sure that you're registered in SAM. It can be a little bit of a cumbersome process. There's a lot of information that goes into SAM. One of our panel members is going to talk about the PTAC just a little bit, but one of the things that I wanted to highlight to you is how great of a resource your PTAC is. So that's your Procurement Technical Assistance Center, and every state has a PTAC. So your PTAC can help you with that registration. They can help you know what information that you need before you go to register. If you get stuck on a step, they can kind of help you kind of walk through that with you. So the PTAC is a great resource. There are a lot of firms out there that will help you register in SAM for a fee. I would highly encourage you not to pay for those services and to reach out to your PTACs, because they're free, they're state funded, it's a great organization. So before you pay, or before you get too frustrated with it, reach out to your PTAC. So first step to doing business with us is registering in SAM. So part of registering in SAM, once you're registered, the next step kind of in that is you can register in the Dynamic Small Business Search. So a lot of your information from SAM will feed into the Dynamic Small Business Search, but when we talked about market research earlier, the Dynamic Small Business Search is a way that we do market research. I can't remember if we talked about that specifically earlier or not. But what you want to do with your SAM profile is take it one step farther in the Dynamic Small Business Search. Sorry, I feel like I'm kind of losing my voice this morning. I told you it still feels like morning this afternoon. So in DSBS, you can put your specific capabilities in there. So for myself, and probably some of these contracting officers as well, when we go to do market research, one of the first steps that we do is we go to the Dynamic Small Business Search. You can limit it by state. We can look at your NAICS codes. We can look at your bonding limits. We can look at your socioeconomic categories. But you can also put in there keywords or capability statements. So if I'm out there looking for a construction firm that builds, a specific type of facility, I can go out to the Dynamic Small Business Search, put the NAICS code in, and then put a keyword in there. And if you have that keyword that's something that your company does, you're going to show up in my market research. So that's just another way that we can get a lead and we can learn about your company as well. So don't just stop with the SAM registration. Make sure that you make your DSBS profile meaningful as well, because we do use that a whole lot. Earlier this morning, they talked about our top 5 NAICS codes. If you're not familiar with the NAICS codes, those are the North American Industry Classification Codes. That's going to tell us pretty much like what business line you're in. So if you do like vertical construction, your NAICS code would be the 236220. There's different ones for every business line. And that's how we also know whether you're a small business or a large business, because they all have either the number of employees or a size standard along with that. So make sure that you've got the right NAICS codes on your profiles as well. You can go to the next slide.
Sorry, are you
Yeah.
limited based on the job that you bid on, based on the code you have in SAM?
You're not limited, but when that contracting officer checks your SAM profile before they make an award, they usually check it actually whenever you submit a proposal, they're going to want to see that NAICS code on there, because that's how they determine, if it's a small business set aside, they're going to want to know that you're a small business. So it's going to say yes or no on your profile. Yeah. So for regulations, so if you do work with the federal government, you're probably familiar with the FAR. So for the Department of Defense, we also have the DFARS. And then since the Army Corps of Engineers falls under the Army, we have the AFARS. And then specific to USACE, we have the UAI, so the USACE Acquisition Instructions. So every time you go out and look at a solicitation, there's going to be all kinds of clauses in there. You're going to want to make sure that you read those clauses and you understand those clauses, because that's what's going to govern your contract. So I would start with the FAR and then just kind of work your way down through the DFARS, the AFARS, and the UAI. But again, if you need help, like if you're looking at that solicitation and you're like, okay, this seems like a foreign language to me, I'm not really sure what this means, don't hesitate to reach out to your contracting officer and just say, hey, I don't know what this means. You can also, like I've got the PTAC on there again. That's one thing with the federal government we're really pushing, is using these PTACs, because they're such great resources. So you can reach out to your PTACs as well, and they can help you interpret that. But you never want to submit a proposal or be awarded a contract and not really understand what those regulations are and what those clauses mean that's in there. So you can go to the next slide. So competition type and contract types. So I'm not going to hit a lot on contract types, but specifically if you're looking at LRD, we almost always award firm fixed price contracts. You will occasionally see a cost reimbursement contract, but I would say probably close to 99% of the time we're going to award firm fixed fee or firm fixed price, not fee, I'm sorry, firm fixed price contracts. So the competition type, that kind of gets back, again, you'll hear us talk about market research. I think Lisa mentioned it earlier that this is one of those events that we consider market research. But we are doing market research all the time. And that's really because that determines the competition that we're going to have on each one of our solicitations. So I'm going to talk about it here in just a second, but I'll talk on it just for a minute here. But when you see a solicitation, when we put something out in SAM, it's going to tell you whether it's unrestricted, a small business set-aside, or a set-aside for the socioeconomic categories. So that can either be 8A, woman-owned, or service-disabled, veteran-owned small business, or hub zone. So when you look at that solicitation, that's kind of important to know, who your competition is. If you're a small business and something's unrestricted, are you competing with all these large businesses as well? Or if you're a hub zone and it's a hub zone set aside, you're just competing with other hub zone firms. So every solicitation will tell you what the set aside is as well. So you can go to the next slide. Yes. Oh. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I kind of did. I talked about they're all firm fixed price. So we will either award our contracts based on low price, and a lot of times that's called a sealed bid. So we're basically just looking at who is the low price. You'll see that on a lot of our construction contracts. Or we're going to do a best value trade-off. So we're going to tell you, and we'll give you specific information in the source selection evaluation criteria. So for the trade-off, we will tell you whether price is more important than technical, your technical is more important than your price, or they're approximately equal. And then we'll have evaluation factors in there. So we may, we'll always look at your past performance, we may look at your management plan, and then some other technical requirement. And within that, we'll tell you what's most important. So after the evaluation board gets together and they evaluate your proposal, then the contracting officer will make that best value determination. So we'll determine who's the true best value, not just the low price. Yes, sir. Yeah, well, yes, and we use sealed bid and invitation for bid interchangeably, yes. And so that's basically where we're just awarding based on low price. So it's usually a public bid opening, and we will read all of the prices. And then we do a responsibility check after that. So it may be that someone is the low, but then we do that responsibility check, and we may have some other things to do on that back end. But usually whoever is the low is who will be awarded that contract. Yep. So the socioeconomic categories and the rule of two. So this is why the market research is so important. So when you look at our forecast, and I'm sure you guys look at it right now, we always tell you what the competition type or the acquisition type is. I can't remember exactly what we have that column labeled right now, but it's the very last column on the forecast. A lot of it right now says to be determined, and that's because we have not completed our market research. But for every contract or every solicitation that we issue, we do market research. So typically, at least I'm from the Louisville district, and we do a lot of vertical construction. And so we have our 5-state MILCON mission, and then we have a nationwide Army and Air Force Reserve mission. So you will see our projects, everywhere and coast to coast, all over the United States. So there's no way for us to know specifically which firms work at Fort Hunter Liggett in California, and they can do this runway project. So the best way for us to know who out there in industry is not only interested in our projects but have the capabilities is through that sources sought notice. So we post those to SAM. Like I said, you've heard a lot about SAM, so you have to register in SAM. We post our market surveys in SAM. That's where the solicitations go, and then that's where the award notices go as well. So for us to determine who can compete on our procurements, we put out a sources sought notice. And what we are looking for in that sources sought notice is we are looking for at least 2 firms in any socioeconomic category that can demonstrate the experience to perform on our project. So when we put that sources sought notice out, it's going to give you specific criteria that we're looking for. So, if it's a vertical construction building, we are going to be looking for you to have demonstrated a project, at least one. We'll usually say you can submit up to 3 projects that are similar in size and scope to our project. So we'll tell you the square footage, and we'll tell you the type of facility. We usually like to see those completed within the last 5 years. We want to see that you've at least self-performed 15% typically. That does change a little bit, so you'll want to read it. And usually the project needs to be substantially complete, which is anywhere from 90 to 95% complete. And again, that'll vary based on the project and what the team wants to see. So when you respond to that sources sought notice, we don't want you just to submit your capability statements. Your capability statements are very important, and they have a place, and that place is not in response to a sources sought notice. We actually want to see up to 3 projects, so we're looking for at least 1 project that you have detailed that meet the criteria that we laid out. If you just give us your capability statement, we really can't do much with that, because that doesn't tell us the experience that you actually have. So make sure that you respond, to those specifics in there. And that's where the rule of 2 comes in. So if we put something out and we get responses from 2 hub zone firms that demonstrate the capabilities, that's when we can set the project aside. The same thing for any of the other socioeconomic categories. And what this FAR references is that as the federal government, we have to consider a set aside to the socioeconomic categories before we can consider a set aside for general small business or full and open or unrestricted for large businesses and everybody that can compete. So there is no preference among the socioeconomic categories for us. We do work for the VA, and the VA, they have to set aside for veteran-owned and service-disabled veteran-owned before they can any of the other socioeconomic categories. So even if the Corps is doing work for the VA, sometimes we'll look to those firms first, but actually per the FAR, we don't have any preference among the socioeconomic categories. So there's several things that can come into play. Say if we have 2 hub zone and 2 service disabled, if we meet the rule of 2 on several things, there's other things that can come into play. But that's typically what we're looking for, and that's why responding to those sources sought notices with quality information is so important. So you can go to the next slide. So quickly, I just want to wrap up so we can make sure and have plenty of time for your all's questions, because like I said, I've got a great group of panel members here. So identifying contracting opportunities. So we've talked a lot about that this morning, and you saw our forecast. But I usually try to tell people, or advice I give to people, I guess, is if you're waiting for that solicitation to hit SAM, you're already behind the game. You need to know about these projects 3, 4, 5, 6 months in advance before they ever hit SAM, because you're going to want to start building your team. You're going to want to start, making those connections, whether it's like the local subcontractor community. You're going to want to start doing a lot of work before that project ever, or that solicitation ever hits SAM, because the time that we put that pre-solicitation notice out, you've got 15-day notice before we put the solicitation out, and that 30 days goes by so quick. And during that 30 days, you're actually putting your proposal together. So you need to start doing this, your homework as far as team members and, getting, all your subcontractors on board and everything else way before that ever hits SAM. So one way that you can do that is by following the forecast. They talked this morning a little bit about industry days. So I know specifically for the Louisville district, this has been a focus for probably at least the past 5 years, is trying to host more industry days. And so that's before we ever put a solicitation out. We'll invite you out to the site. We will tell you all the information that we know. If we know anything about the evaluation criteria, if we're that far along, we'll tell you that as well. But that's your opportunity to learn about the project before a solicitation's ever out there. And I think one of the questions this morning was from maybe a supplier or something like that, how can we get contracts with you guys? I'm not interested in being a GC. I'm not a construction contractor. And those industry days, that's a great way. Because even if you're interested in being a subcontractor, go to those industry days. You can see who's interested in being a prime contractor. And that's one way to get on their team early. Because I guarantee a lot of those large projects, they're already building their teams way in advance. So just be proactive. Coming here, this is a way to be proactive. You get in front of the technical people. You get to learn about the opportunities. You get to learn about what's important to us, how you guys can help us deliver our mission. So just be proactive. One of the things on the forecast that I'll touch on real quick, because I'm talking longer than I want to in this session, we're going to post our updates to our forecast quarterly, and that's going to be for all of the whole division. So one of the priorities for us within LRD is making sure that you have an accurate, up-to-date, readable forecast, so that you're not trying to decipher what every column means on 7 different forecasts. So you can look for that quarterly. So that's a great way to keep updated. Check SAM daily. I know that may seem like a hard task, but go out there because things get posted all of the time, and some of them have some short suspenses on it. If you don't have SAM already set up to send you some automated notices, again, that's what the PTAC is really good for. The PTAC can help you set up those notices as well. I won't say too much more about market research because I think I've hit on it enough, how important it is to respond to those sources sought notices. And then subcontracting. So not everybody is interested in being a prime contractor. And then we have probably more subcontracting opportunities than we do prime contracting opportunities. So again, go to those industry days. You can look at the interested vendors list on SAM. You can go to the pre-proposal conferences, the site visits. There are so many ways to network. One other thing, and I think it was mentioned this morning, and most districts do this. I know if you go out to the Louisville District Small Business webpage, I've got a list of every AE IDIQ and every construction MATOC that we have in place, and actually I've got a lot of our environmental awards on there too. So you can see who our prime contractors are. You can reach out to them for different subcontracting opportunities because we're always using those contracts. We're always writing task orders against those. So there are tons of ways or tons of opportunities if you're not interested in being prime. So again, I'm going to turn it over to our panel just to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. So I'm going to start with Janie.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Jane Roney. Good afternoon. My name is Jane Roney, and I'm with the Pittsburgh District, and I'm a contracting officer. I've been a contracting officer for 2 years, and prior to that, I was a contract specialist for 4 years, and even prior to that, I come from ECMA, so I am aware of the importance of contractors. We need you, and just like you need us to accomplish a job. So glad to see all of you here today.
Good afternoon. I'm Delaria Martin. I'm with the Nashville District. I am the acting branch chief and also a contracting officer as well. I've been in the Nashville office for about two and a half years. Previous assignments, I was a 51 Charlie, as some of you guys know, military district, military contracting as well. And again, I understand where you all coming from, coming into contracting, understanding the program, trying to find out about small business. So I was one of those ones making sure teaching, providing that class and that training so that you all can get the training that you need to provide the contracting tools. So I understand.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shonda Harris. I'm a business opportunity specialist with the U.S. Small Business Administration, the SBA. I work with the Columbus District Office in Columbus, Ohio. So there are 2 district offices in Ohio. We are the largest district office. We cover 60 of Ohio's 88 counties, and there's also the Cleveland office. As a BOS, I work directly with 8A firms, so firms that are economically and socially disadvantaged. I manage about 20 of them. But in addition to doing that, if anyone's interested in any of the other small business programs, HubZone, woman-owned, service disabled, then we do work with them, whatever inquiries. Prior to working with the SBA, I was a PTAC counselor. So the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, probably one of your best resources as a small business. They're the actual boots on the ground resources that can assist you as it relates to anything kind of from cradle to grave as it relates to a contract. So anything that you need, finding out about how to get set up in SAM, going over a solicitation. A lot of the PTAC counselors were former government employees, but we work directly with our PTACs. We do trainings every year, and then we work with them on a variety of bases. But great resources for you to have. And I definitely understand because I've worked with small businesses and now in a variety of different capacities over the years. So it's great to see everybody here today.
All right, we're going to open it up for questions. You guys can pick our brains, anything you want to know. Just out of curiosity, how many people are small businesses? How many people have held a federal contract before? How many people have held a contract with USACE before? Yeah. All right. Is there anybody in here that's interested in being a sub rather than a prime? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Pretty good mix then. All right. Do you have a question?
I tried to put names, but I misspelled them all. So if people put y'all's panel names back up.
Yeah. Would you mind going back to that last slide? Yep. Did you have a question?
I did, related to the forecast.
Mm-hmm.
And the notices, the forecast is timeline is, there's no timeline really, that quarter is kind of hard to track that. And I think what you were talking about were mostly construction conferences, but they're probably not pre-closure conferences. So this is better than that. And then, Sam, maybe I just don't understand the nuances of Sam quite yet. But I don't know anybody who likes that program. It's not easy to work with.
SAM is difficult. I will say sometimes I know my contracting office will tell me, hey, we posted this today, and I'll go out, just like one of you all from industry, so I'll just, without knowing the solicitation number, I pretend like I don't know the solicitation number, I'll go out there and I'll type in just the DODAC for Louisville. And I'm like, okay, this project's not here. So then I'm like, I'll take that out. I'll put in some keywords that I think would fit this title, and I still can't find it sometimes, and I have to search multiple ways. I know they made some improvements on SAM a couple years ago, but I do still agree that there's some work. But one of the things that I always encourage people to do, so if you see a project on the forecast and it says it's coming out in third quarter and it's third quarter and you haven't seen it yet, you can always reach out to your deputy for small business for that district and say, hey, I've been tracking this. Do you have any updates? And all of us will respond and tell you, hey, we think it's coming out in a couple weeks, or, it's been delayed. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay, well, that's my next question. How can we get rules that information? And that's helpful, except not everybody responds to the question, which means a little frustrating. There are, and every district seems to do a little bit differently. There are a couple districts that I know. One was in your division, the guy from Detroit, I think he's gone, Scott
Yes.
He's really good about sending us
Mm-hmm.
information. Ask us if we want to be on the list, and we direct the stuff we got to go to us. And that's very, that would be a standard operating practice. I think that would be a big thing.
Yeah.
He's gone.
Yeah, he moved on to another position. Yeah.
He was great.
Yeah, he was good.
He'd call you, are you submitting a search software? They got right in the wheelhouse.
Yeah.
It's on its way, I'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, did it come in again?
Yeah. Yeah.
So one quick note. On SAM, there's a quick note, wild card. So if you're looking up like by DODAC, if you put an asterisk in front of the DODAC, you can find, if you just put the asterisk in front of it, normally everything will pop up under that DODAC. So that's just a quick find. For us, we do the wild card, which is the asterisk. And you can find different things that way as well. That's the whiskey number. Normally the whiskey number that you see. The whiskey 912, correct, for that district.
We do. So it's in the brochure
Correct.
for all of the district. But you can go out to most of the small business deputies' websites, and most of us have it listed for all of the districts within the Corps.
An additional thing, as far as searching SAM, sometimes it can be daunting. But again, going back with the PTACs, maybe working with them. I know our PTAC, and there's the Kentucky PTAC that's here. They really do a phenomenal job in helping you search. And again, we work closely with them. Also, PTACs do have, it's a free resource that you can set up searches. So you can put in your keywords and your NAICS codes. And then it searches a variety of databases on a daily basis, and it sends that information to you. So that can be something additional that, you know, if you work with your PTAC, that you may get, and that may pop up in there as well. You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
So for those of us who are looking for subcontracting opportunities, when the Corps puts out larger projects, I assume they have diversity goals. Do they list the companies that are landholders that we can then reach out to these individual teams for potential opportunities there?
No. So most of the time, if we put something out that's unrestricted, or all of the time, we don't know who's going to submit a proposal. So that's why those industry days could kind of give you a clue as to who is interested in being a prime, because most primes will come. The same thing for those site visits and pre-proposal conferences. And then if you go out on SAM for each solicitation, there's an interested vendors list. You could add yourself to that, and a lot of times the primes will add themselves to that as well, as kind of another networking opportunity or tool.
On that list, it used to give the company name and the contact. I think that contact has disappeared. Now it's just like a company name.
Within SAM?
Yes, on the IVB.
Okay. That's something that we can take back and see if we can work with the help desk.
Like, you can put your name on there, but it won't list the contact information for you or the other IVBs.
Okay. Yeah, we can take that back with Sam. Yes, Benita?
I was just going to say, sometimes the SBA subnet.gov, contractors will put their need for subcontractors on that website as well.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if SMU here literally does it, so you're talking about industry days, but generally, typically, the way I've seen them go is we go here, we see presentations about how things are changing and moving and what's coming out and all that, and we never take the time to have a conversation or do something very specific that says, hey, the larges are over here, right, and they have economic, they have small business goals that they have to meet, go talk to them, right? But then we have GCs like ourselves, like we're a GC and we do construction and we're working hard for Louisville, right? And I need subs in different local areas because I need to learn more about if I want to branch out of this area and go work in this area. I don't know anybody. But you don't see in our events where we're telling some of these small businesses that are actually performing the work, that are coming to work for the GCs, we don't see them there, right? There's some, but there's not a lot. And we're not really doing a good job of marketing or advertising, saying, hey, you guys that are doing the field work and the labor work, we're going to host a 1-hour event for you guys to come in and basically talk to the GCs and the larges about using you in these areas. And I think that's somewhere, all events, and I'm all over the East Coast, up and down, all the districts. And that's one thing I see that kind of
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
here's something on Pittsburgh.
So, just something to take back and step on what you guys are kind of alluding to, is we just don't have an opportunity to bring feedback.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say one of the things that the Kentuckiana SAME Post does, because we, the Louisville district, we, kind of hosted in conjunction. They're separate events, but back-to-back days. But one of the things that we really market about the Kentuckiana SAME Post is that a lot of the prime contractors that work for the Louisville district do host those tables in the networking session. So if I ever have a prime that comes to me and say, hey, I really want to work with the Louisville district, one of the first things I'm going to say, not to try to get them at the event, but hey, this is a good way to get in contact, because almost all of our AE firms are there. About probably 50% of our construction firms of the GCs are there. And it's like, if you want a subcontracting opportunity, go to that event.
I threw Baltimore a big curveball when small business, and she says, what? I said, AA, and I said, I'd like to meet more subs. Can I have a table next to, you name a large company? And she was so confused, I didn't get my table, right? But it's the same concept, right? So I'm a small business, I'm a GC.
Yeah.
I would love to have a table and have those interviews with people.
Yeah. And that you're talking about the SAME post, right? Okay. Because I will caveat that just to make sure we're clear. We don't actually have tables at our open house. So if you're coming to strictly a core hosted event, at least for the Louisville district, we won't have tables for contractors, but that's the portion that we team up with SAME for. And I'm sure that they would love to have you host a table there. Yes, sir.
Some opportunities post-award too, a lot of contractors are still.
They are, especially on the MATOCs, because there's task orders coming out left and right. Again, I'm going to talk about the Louisville district, just specific for our mission, and then I'll turn it over, and you guys can talk about Nashville and Pittsburgh. But we're the Louisville district, we have the nationwide Army and Air Force Reserve program. So when we set up our construction MATOCs this last time, we did it by geographic region. So we have a northeast pool, a southeast pool, and a west pool. And we are throwing all kinds of task orders on that, but it covers such a large region that you're right, they're still looking for subcontractors in multiple areas. So that's why if you go out to the website and you look, you can see who we have who all of those primes are, so that you know who to network with if you see an opportunity on the forecast. Because I think there was a question this morning, and I think it was coming more from the services side. But I know one thing that we're working with on our forecast is getting more of those task order opportunities on there. So historically, you would have typically seen just standalone contracts on the forecast. But now you're going to see, at least for the Louisville district, if you go out there, we say, this will be on the northeast pool or this will be on the southeast pool. So we're trying to move in that direction to where we get more task orders out there.
You said those IDIQ contract holders are on your website?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's helpful.
Yeah, and I think the title on it is IDIQ contract holders or something very close to that. Yeah. Yes.
I would recommend to small businesses, especially if you're a sub or maybe you want to get eventually a prime contract, start to market yourselves. Once you find out, who's won the MATOCs, you find out who the primes are, start marketing. Even here, I encourage some firms that I work with, hey, start marketing yourselves or at least developing a relationship before you would ever need it. So if you're meeting someone here, start to reach out with them before you ever need it. If you need funding, start to talk to, banker before you need it, so that when those projects come up, you've actually started to develop a relationship. Maybe there's some smaller things that you can work on, building that trust. And it's like a relationship. You can start the dating process way before, so that you have kind of a head start on it, or at least start to do research on the companies. And maybe you can look at previous contracts in the past, look at the forecasts in the past, see who all the awardees are, and start to research the companies. Find out what they do. Is there anything that you can complement? Maybe there's a niche area that you have, especially with the GC. Maybe there's a niche area that you have, a specialty area that you can provide, and not just, marketing saying, hey, I want to be a sub to you, but what value are you bringing to them? So I would offer that and suggest that.
Yes.
I have two questions. One, I started to register in SAM.gov,
Did you try the CM help desk?
I'm sorry?
Did you try the CM help desk?
No, I
No.
didn't. That's my question, I didn't know, was that,
Yes, and a lot of that is kind of outside of our control as well. But that SAM help desk usually can point you in the right direction.
are there any requirements you need to have as a business before you can meet with the PTAC officer, have them help you?
No.
You don't have to
Mm-mm.
been in business for a certain amount of time?
No.
or- Okay.
I don't want to take over, but they are free. Most states are free, depends on how they're kind of structured. But they receive federal funds as well as some state funding, but you can reach out at any time. Now, SAM is having a lot of issues now that they've transitioned from using the Duns and the provider, Dun and Bradstreet, and the new provider. So I would say you definitely may want to work with your PTAC, because there's some instances, I've had some firms that have gotten some issues where there's a delay with getting your SAM registration to go through for a variety of different reasons, but they may be able to assist and make it quicker.
So I suggest you get with your local PTAC early on into the process, and they can get you enrolled quickly. So I would suggest that.
So we've talked a lot about pre-award. So almost everything we've talked about is pre-award. So post-award. So some of the questions that I get, I'll have a meeting with somebody that's been trying to break into the federal marketplace what seems like for years. And they're like, Crystal, I don't know what else to do. I'm registered and everything. I'm following the forecast. I found all these opportunities. I've submitted a proposal and I'm not successful. So one of the pieces of advice that I always give people is, for one, it is difficult to break into the federal marketplace. It's difficult to get that first contract, but don't give up. Always be persistent. But what I always tell people is, after you submit that proposal, whether you're successful or unsuccessful, make sure and request a debriefing. So a debriefing is one of the few opportunities that you're going to get direct feedback from that source selection team, that contracting officer. A lot of times they'll have their technical people on there with them, whoever was on that board, to get a debriefing. So I was going to ask Janie and Delaria, just, your thoughts on a debriefing, why they're valuable, why firms should request a debriefing, and then if you just have any advice from that standpoint as contracting officers.
I haven't done many debriefings at all because my requirements have been sealed bids, and the bid has, for sealed bids, you do not get a debriefing. In the solicitation, it states the requirement that the awardee is going to be the offer submitting the lowest price to the lowest bidder that is both responsive and responsible. But the FAR is what governs a lot of the, of the debriefing. Like for the task orders, if for MATOX, which is the multiple award fair opportunity, the FAR governs that unsuccessful offers are not required to get a debrief if it's under $6 million. But it could be a KO discretion, like Crystal had mentioned. But debriefings are very important if it is a sole source, and there is requirements that was evaluated for the proposal.
And so in my response, I would say, yes, getting a debriefing is very important. And the reason I would say that on a positive note, it gives you as the contractor a little bit of insight in reference to the significance of what we seen shortcomings, or what were some of the things we looked at technically that can make you better in your proposals. So for debriefing in my aspect, I would say, yes, it's important. And not getting into like the rankings or any of that. It's just basically your proposal, your company proposal, and how you did. So in a positive note, I was like, yes, debriefing is important. One thing I want to circle back to is the PTAC. When it comes to you getting in touch with the PTAC and capability statement, one of the good things that as a KO, I've worked with a couple of contractors on getting with the PTAC, formalizing their capability statement, because that's important. If your capability statement doesn't capture me, or doesn't capture what we're looking for, it doesn't really get looked at. So the PTAC can actually help you, and that's free, help you work on your capability statement, can help you build based on your next, based on the services that you provide. So I would say early on, get with them to fix that, to work on your capability statement.
That's good.
Yes, sir.
On that note, on capability statements, I recently learned via our PTAC office that our capability statement may be too broad. Whenever we created it, we were trying to not be eliminated because we put ourselves in too narrow of a niche. But that may have actually self-selected us out, contrary to our initial logic. Can you corroborate that recommendation via the PTAC office? Or in your mind, is it necessary to have multiple capability statements that are targeting different things?
I would say, yeah, based on the sources sought, based on what we're looking for when we say the sources sought and the market research, when we're going out there to industry and we're looking for your capabilities based on what that requirement is, cater it to that, be relevant and be relevant to what we're asking. It doesn't have to be so broad, but be relevant. Make sure you're putting it out there exactly what you're doing. If I'm looking for instance, sewage or water capabilities, or I'm doing something for portable water or something like that, make sure you capture that. If I'm talking about, I'm looking for, let me see, I would say piping, make sure you're talking about the different pipes, the long, the length, and all that things. Make sure you're capturing how far or how long ago you did this, and you know how much work you did, and how far it, you know, how, and if you was a prime, you know, if you was a sub, make sure you entering that, and then the dollar amount captures that. If I'm asking for something that's in the range of 3 to 4 million, put that in there. If it's not in that amount, and that's just a number I'm throwing out, it could be less, it could be more, but make sure it's capturing those things that I'm looking for.
Yeah, but your general capability statement, like if you're coming to an event like this, is that what you're kind of talking about too? Or are you talking about sources sought
Specifically
notice?
for the sources
Okay,
sought.
yeah. I wouldn't confuse your capability statement with a response to a sources sought notice, just because we do get a lot of capability statements in response to sources sought notice, and we can't use those. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure we were all clear on that, kind of that distinction there. So. All right, any last questions?
Yeah, last year, I know for the outreach engagement, there was like a whole list of small business outreach meetings that were going to take place. I'm not sure if the one that for this year, if that's the same thing, or
Is
or
that?
there a different one coming? This was the one that was on the website
Yep.
for this event.
That is the booklet that we took to the National SAME Conference for LRD. So those are events for this coming year. Those are upcoming events.
Because I only see one that's identified for, more or less identified for small business.
Some of those just have targeted, like they're targeted outreach events. So the one like the Louisville District Open House is in there. So we don't target specifically small businesses or a certain socioeconomic category. That is for large businesses in all socioeconomic categories. So if it just has like a target on there, that just means, like I know for Nashville District, like they're targeting woman-owned small businesses, but all businesses can come. But they may have some special sessions specifically for woman-owned small businesses, but they're open for everyone.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was going to be more this year or not, because right now they're going like 5 or 6 last.
We each typically host one, either open house or industry day every year. And then sometimes we do have, some special ones kind of mixed in there. I know Louisville District, we had 2 open houses last year. So there may be more to come, but those are the ones that we have set right now. All right. Well, it is, yes.
I know you guys like to be context of review on sole source and when can you.
Are you talking about the 8A program? Yeah. So I think he said, what is your view on sole sources and when can you use them? So he's specifically talking about the 8A program. So we can do 8A sole sources. We can do 8A competitive as well. I know for the Louisville district, it's typically, if you look at our numbers, sole source actions through the 8A program are typically less than 5% of our total program. So it really depends on the project. If the project is a good fit for the program and we've got the right fit for the 8A firm, then it's a great program. For us, I know every office of counsel operates a little bit different. So when I'm looking specifically on the construction side, because we do use the 8A program a little bit more heavily on the environmental side, but on the construction side, it has to be less than the $4.5 million threshold. And specifically for the Louisville district, we're only looking at design bid build projects. The way that our Office of Counsel interprets some of the regulations, we typically don't use the 8A sole source program for design build projects. So it's got to have the right project and the right fit, but we utilize it when it makes sense. So, and I think that's pretty much how all of the districts operate. But again, when we do our market research, that's always considered as well, if it fits within the parameters of the program. Yeah. But I always tell people, don't wait if you're in the 8A program, don't wait for a sole source opportunity. Keep competing, keep building your resume, keep looking for projects as well. All right, well, we are a few minutes over, so I think will all be available throughout the afternoon in the networking session, so if you have any questions, make sure and stop by. All right, appreciate you guys.
Would it be